Chat on Zoom number 226. I'm your host, Greg Gabb. The gang's all here with Don and John and John and Garth and Lenny and Chris and Jeremy and Mike and Wayne and other people. Let's talk slot cars. Let's begin with show and tell. John has something he wants to show and tell, and hopefully other people have some things they want to show and tell. John is first. Go ahead, John.
Well, thank you. I just thought the nice weather is a double-edged sword. It keeps me from being in the workshop, but the good news is you can do what I like to call the hobby store tour, or rather than a wine tour, it's like a hobby store tour. So one of the things I picked up actually today on my because it was a beautiful day here today, guys. Let me just show you this. Let me just share my screen here. And I'm sure you'll recognize this as an older Scalextric offering, the Alfa Romeo 4-door Touring Coupe. And I took close-ups of the front just to show that this thing looks like if it's been used very gently, because a lot of the time the tampo printing gets scratched off just from use, and like the sides are just lovely. Yeah. The tires, I mean, I don't think there's much life in them, but they look like they've never really been used. The rear looks good.
That, John, was that at Panther?
Yes, it was. Yes, I was there today. I dropped my daughter off and took a little Miata spin, and thought, and they have, well, you've been there, Chris. They have these wonderful bins full of stuff, and This was one of those bins full of stuff. And so I thought, okay, what the heck? I'll take a look at it. And not that I'm a big fan of the car, but I couldn't resist the price. And it's got a motor. I tested it. It works. This is $14.95 Canadian. What is that? Like $3 US?
$1.50.
Yeah, exactly. But even look at the top. Like it's never rolled over. I mean, they have these vestigial sort of side mirrors, but they're in good shape. So I think it's either been gently or never really been run.
Yeah.
And in another bin, if I could just continue here, believe it or not, so I beg your pardon?
Indulge away.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Because, I'm going to be on a figure and scenery kick once the weather gets, cold and snowy as it tends to up here. So in another one of, as Chris described at Panther Hobbies, they have these Binzo stuff. In the bin, another bin, was a bunch of figures. And it was basically a huge package of figures. And it was like a grab bag. So I thought, what the heck, just buy them. And they're all military figures, but there were sitting figures, crouching figures, and of course, a whole bunch of bits and pieces. But yeah, the sitting figures were really, really cool. Like you can make these guys, which I think are Tamiya.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Exactly. Yeah, it was. This is from an SAS Land Rover model by Tamiya in 1/35 scale. Yeah. Like they could make some really cool, hippies or bikers or something. It's awesome. It'd be so cool.
Was that Monty sitting up the back there? Let's go back a couple of shots.
It does kind of look like it does, doesn't it? Yeah. Hang on. I'll go back. Hang on. Where was he?
Yeah. There he is. No.
Right here?
No, not that one.
Go forward one.
Yeah. There he is.
Yeah, on the glass.
Yeah.
Sitting nice. Well, yeah, there's another one behind him as well with no arms.
Yeah.
In the grey.
Exactly.
Yeah, that one there.
Yep. And the cool thing is, like, wait till you see the bin. Like this is just the stuff I pulled out that I thought was cool. There's like this came with it as well. So there are all the arms and other sort of figures and stuff. And I popped it just into a box so I wouldn't lose everything, because it was literally in a vacuum bag. So just to go through these again. I thought, I'm sitting out on the deck and the sun's shining, and I thought, well, let's do a little experiment. So I took, obviously this is a World War II German Afrika Korps soldier.
Face looks like George C. Scott.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah, but definitely Afrika Korps, right? With the high boots and the the baggy stuff. And then so I thought, okay, take a knife to it and see what we can do. Now he's a spectator with a baseball cap and old man shorts,
Cool.
right? And as I told my wife, I did not see that coming. Huh? Huh? That's yeah, but I mean, it'd make a great little figure.
Those
So I just-
African poor guys are clever.
Yeah. So it's very, very cool. And then the one thing I have to personally resist is then going and then making molds of these damn things, because like there's like 600 figures there. It's like, just make it, put it on the track, enjoy it. You don't have to replicate it. So anyway, so so therein lies the summer tour sort of thing, and I'm sure there's more to come. And there's also some, at least in our neck of the woods, there are some model shows coming up. There's one on September 14th. That is a model show. It's called Torcan, and they're car, airplane, military modelers. And I hope to go, because again, you never know what you can find that you can use for your track, or what. Like these guys don't like 32nd scale cars, so take advantage if you can. And then of course there's the Group 25, I think on the 28th, Chris, of September.
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah, okay, somewhere around that. So I thought I'd give them a shout out as well, and that's a shout out to Panther Hobbies, because they're so much fun. Anyway, so I just thought I'd share that with you folks.
Good stuff. Right on the nose for subject matter. All right, thank you for sharing. And Lenny, what you got?
Right. Here we go. I hope. Yep.
Oh yeah, little sanding machine there.
Yeah, well, I got myself tied up with a group, the race Carrera allegedly standard cars.
Mm.
So I needed to make a tyre grinder up to do the tyres on the axles. So this is what I came up with. Just basically a couple of bits of aluminium channel or aluminum, if you like, and an old BRM motor out of something. I think it's out of a Group C Toyota or something, 24 scale, and a couple of old 24 scale front wheel, O-ring type front wheels. So yeah, so that's basically what I come up with. A bit of 80 grit on a bit of melamine.
How do you control the height of the wheels so you don't just make a smoother egg?
What the diameter?
Yeah.
I just keep sanding them down because that lifts up. I basically I've got a video showing you how to use it in a minute.
Yeah, but you got to hold it with your hand so that you're just skimming the high spots, or does it have something to? Okay.
No, I was thinking about putting an adjustable screw in it, but I needed time for that. It was sort of a last minute decision.
some kind of screw that helps you just keep it steady while you go up and down. That's all you need.
Yeah. Oh, that might come eventually. I'm planning to do make up a tyre razor one out of a bit of aluminium. I've got access to a machine shop, so I'm going to try and mill one of them up at some stage.
Yeah.
But this was just a last minute thing. Knocked it up in an afternoon. That piece there holds the axle in place, and it's grooved at the front there to hold the bearings. So there's another shot of it there. It's an old slotted sidewinder gear, powering it.
There won't be a lot of torque in that motor, but as long as it goes steady, you should be able to do the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got it on a pivot so you can go side to side.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's just basically a tech screw. You can see the screw in the middle here, straight down into the. So there's one of them. And there's the other. There it is. I can hold it up like that and just radius off the edges of the tyres. So yeah, so we're running Carreras. I'm actually going racing tonight. So they're meant to be stock standard, but once a bunch of tuner guys get involved.
I mean, just showing them how much better the car runs with round tires.
Yeah.
Assuming it's a non-magnet.
Oh no, it is magnet.
It's magnet. Well, it'll help anyway, just not as much.
It's very weak, but I like to get big tyres. They're MJK urethane tyres. They're locally the produced tyre.
Yeah.
We get from one of the blokes up in the northern suburbs of Adelaide. But yeah, so that's basically my show and tell. So
Nice.
Stop there.
Yeah,
Locked it up in an afternoon. So just a quick.
on the discussions on pretty much any time tire truing comes up on various forums. People are all, oh, this is the one I use. It's the best one, blah, blah, blah. And of course, I'm like, well, here's my 3D printed one. I think it's the best one, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes down to it, the only thing you need is something that turns the axle so that the tires turn, right? A sanding surface of some sort that you either move or it moves or whatever, so you're not just sanding on one spot continuously. And something to control the distance between the wheel and the sanding surface so that you're taking off the high spots, not just making a smoother egg.
Yeah.
It can be exactly what you did. Literally just some C channel and some holes drilled in a slot car motor.
Some old
Or
bearings.
Friggin' $500.
Yeah, that cost me nothing. All those
Yeah,
bits
exactly.
are in my back shed.
Yeah, and people.
Thought
Pretty well.
I thought that was an old. I thought that was an old Champion chassis.
At first
No,
I
it's
thought
just
it
a
was
bit of
too.
aluminium channel.
I thought it was an older chassis.
You've given me an idea, John, to make a chassis now.
Some C channel and some holes. That's all you need. Spacers.
Yeah,
Good to
that's all
go.
you need.
But it's no
Or
real
make a nice
fun if
little
you
open
don't
wheeler chassis.
over-engineer it altogether. You know,
Yeah,
you must over-engineer everything, otherwise it's not enough.
it's fun.
Yeah. I don't know whether any of you watch Bad Obsession Motorsport.
Yes.
If you want to see some motor engineering work, go and see what those guys did to this Mini.
Yes.
Project Binky, it's called.
That's right. Make
Yep.
the noise.
Yeah. So, yeah, but in the end, I usually finish the tyres off on a bit of 1200 and dry on the car. Just put it on the car and run the tyres on and
Yep.
on a bit of 1200 just to finish them off. We'll see how it goes tonight. We've got a race tonight. So I had my first one last week. So I got a 7th, but that's all right, out of 17. So I'm happy with that.
That's
Yeah, all right.
good
I'll
stuff.
get out your way.
Yeah, thanks for showing.
Thanks for listening.
That's good.
All right, Garth, you ready? Go for it.
Still muted, Garth.
All right, update on the chassis stuff. There you go.
You hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Oh, you unshared.
hang on. Sorry about that.
That sounded like passing gas.
It was the feet on the tail.
Yeah. In Canada, we say, "Oh, the ducks just flew by." That's our
Yeah.
excuse.
See that elephant run under my chair? Come on, Garth, you were doing it just 5 seconds ago.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Go for it.
Okay, all right, this is just an update on my, what I've been doing with suspension on the Outlaw rotating pod. Okay, here's the car that I was using. That's what's in it, the pod with and I've just been swapping the suspension out on this thing. And it's got the pod has been cut down to 0.5. And I got some MR slot car / scale racing silicone 0.5 millimeter washers under the pod. Okay, and then I just switched out the top. Okay, and I also got a shipment of some more MR slot car stuff. So I got 0.5s, 1s, and 1.5s, and these are the EVA foams that I've been using. It's a close up of what they look like. And these are, these various, I don't know, I guess they're all supposed to be all the same diameter, but I'm not sure, it seems like some of them are stiffer than others. So anyways, the first thing I did was I used the pod, and these are just mock-ups of that setup. This is not a pod that's been cut off, but so I have the MR 0.5 underneath, and this was the first test with the 1 millimeter MR slot car with 2 stainless steel washers. Okay, second version was the 1 millimeter with a 0.5 millimeter silicone MR put onto the top of it. Okay, so I tested that. Next one was the last of the MR stuff that I had, which was the 1.5 millimeter thickness silicone. And then the other two were the EVA foam that Jeremy laser cut on just one in a stack. Okay. And the last one, I believe, is a double stack. Okay. With 3 washers, 3 stainless steel washers. And surprisingly, these are all really, really good. The experiment with cutting down the bottom of the pod and putting that 0.5 silicone washer in there, as suggested by Mr. Walker and Mr. Rose, is proved to be excellent. All 5 of those things with very little track time, just me driving the car, either broke the track record or was right next to the track record, okay, which was, half a second faster than anything other than that. And that's without really trying on it. Next week, we're going to really do some trying. And interestingly enough, on all these configurations, let's see if I can go back through them here. Was this one, which was 1, and then those 2 together, that one by itself, this one by itself, those 2 together. That was the combinations. And what I'm finding out is that they're all really good. And some of them are really different. Example, this 1.5 millimeter silicone MR washer, okay, was by far the stiffest feeling suspension of all these that I tried. Okay. Interestingly enough, it's the one with the fastest lap time. Okay. The car was very stiff, but I think it suited my driving style. Okay. And then at the end of this test, I got over to this were the double stack of EVA foam, which is this guy. And this one was almost as good. And it's really interesting, completely different sort of driving feel, but all very good. And I'm starting to realize that, gee whiz, different drivers might like those combinations differently. In other words, what I'm saying is that, like I might like the really stiff style, and then another driver might like something completely different and come up with and be able to drive it in a faster way. And I'm finding that out a lot by the testing thing that I'm doing with this guy that I've got that I call my test driver. And really what happens is he comes over for a couple hours every week and I watch him. I give him a car that's set up a certain way, and I watch the car. We watch the lap times. I watch what he does, the way he drives the car, and because it's completely different. And man, I'm telling you, what an education it is for me, because before this, I never really could do that. Okay, and so with this couple hours a week, I'm getting a slot car education just watching the guy and watching and I'm realizing that different people drive different ways. You know what I mean? Just one quick example of that is on one of the cars, with me driving the car, it was smooth as glass and beautiful, and no tail wagging, just absolutely, the ideal slot car. I give the car to him a couple days later, and he's doing fast lap times, but he's wiggle wagging the car out of the turns, and just completely different, different look to the way the car is driving because of the driver that's driving it. Okay, so it's very interesting exercise for me. So, but in general, this is the big ticket here, right here. Having the pod cut off and having having that slight small suspension underneath the pod lugs, okay? Regardless of what I've got on the top, okay? All of the, like I said, all of them really produce really beautiful drivable cars with fast lap times. So it's hard to beat that. So
You may want to try, Garth, adding another 0.5, but you try and equalize the top and the bottom a little more. That'll give you a little more consistent and progressive roll.
yeah, and like I said, Chris, the next week, those 5 combinations, I just did a few laps on each one. And when I give them to the other guy, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that car and we're gonna start with the one setup and have him test it and do some lap times, record them, then make the change to the next version, change to the next version, all with him driving so I can observe and see. And it's been quite an exercise. I'm learning a lot about suspensions and with that pod, I'm telling you, it's pretty nice with that pod. So anyways, that's what I've done so far.
A couple of comments for you, Garth. You know your nylon nut on the top of your screw. I see that you're running out of screw length there, and in some cases the nylon is not around the thread.
Oh, you're being fooled there. I told you that was a mock-up. Okay, that was just a.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I noticed the
in that vein, Wayne. I'm sorry for the pun on that one, but I have found one interesting thing. Okay, and that is, this is related more to foam than it is to the silicone washers. Okay, the way that you tighten down that nut, okay, with the washers, okay, is really quite critical. Okay, because if you start squeezing the foam together, what you get is, and what I'm finding out is that the way I want the car to be set up is for that. When I tighten that nut down, I want that setup to have a static feeling. Okay, I don't want the thing to be squeezed in any way. Okay, I want all the squeezing to happen during the driving of the car. That's one thing that I've really found out, and especially with foam, it's really evident with the foam. The foam just changes characteristic completely with just a little bit of a turn. Okay, but
you can get a nut with a flange already on it that's a lower profile, lower height.
With the lock nut?
Yeah, it's a lock nut. If he goes back to AliExpress and goes M2 Nylock nut, he'll find them.
M2 Nylock flange nut?
You wouldn't have to put that in because they would all come up.
Well, it's sort of like, to tell you the truth, Wayne, all of that stuff I just showed, it's sort of like it's so much better than, when I started this exercise, it's like, holy cow, you know what I mean? I mean, it was quite the education, and it's created a really, really drivable no mag car. Okay, on a plastic track, but a long bumpy plastic track that with using silicone tires and still having a really nice setup.
What you need to remember there is that Carrera is, although you've got it in 3 dimensions, it's not actually all that bumpy. It's nowhere near as bumpy as Scalextric can be.
No, I'm sorry.
As bumpy as an Inco is.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, piss on Carrera. I just mean that in general, with all the track separations and the ups and the downs of the track.
Yeah, that causes
the fact that it's plastic. It's not the same as a smooth wood track. Is what I meant.
Or even a single layered plastic track that would be flatter than what you've got, I'm sure. But Inco is just bumpy, just within a single track piece length.
Yeah, I got you.
As well as when in our back and forth, Garth, I mentioned to you, do not compress. Don't tighten the screws enough to compress the washer's end or the foam.
Yes, that's
And
exactly.
you may want to play around with. One thing I would do, I would add another 1/2 mil on the bottom to equalize the up and down, side to side, and then mess around with the nut and screw tensions.
Might also be worth trying a piece of foam underneath your motor pod where you've got that flat washer now.
There is a piece underneath the motor pod.
Foam, I said. I meant.
No, I would use the silicone. The foam doesn't. The foam has it doesn't have as good a memory, and after a while, it will fatigue.
Yeah, that's my experience too.
Yeah.
The you know, in regards to foam, the next product that I'm trying to get my hands on is silicone foam. I have experimented with some military grade 5 millimeter thick military silicone foam that I just happened to have my hands on from an old job I had, 20 years ago. And and I did actually include it in this test. And it was really kind of bizarre because I had to fabricate the foam. It was like a brown foam, silicone foam rubber thing. And so I sliced it with a knife and cut out a little circle and stuck a pin in it to put the screw in there. And I did test that at a sort of a half-assed 2 millimeter thickness. And it was awesome. It was incredible. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it looked like a piece of shit, but so
Actually, Garth, do you have a punch by chance? Because you could probably punch.
yeah, but see, punches compress the material, and what we're going to do is we're going to laser cut it. Okay, like we do the EVA foam. Laser. I guess silicone is tough to laser cut, but some people have done it with you add a layer onto the top of it, like another material on top, like a cardboard or a saran wrap or something like that. So it fools the laser into cutting, and provided you're not cutting a real thick piece. Okay, and this would be 2 millimeters. Okay, so and I do have all kinds of punches, John. I've got AliExpress steel wool die things and rounds and squares and you name, and I cut my lead with that, for the lead plates and stuff, and I punch out rubber with it and stuff. But I want to get something that's a little bit better. I want to try with a laser. So
there's lots of things that will work like that.
And then seeing the idea behind that is you get that sort of smooth feel of the foam, but it doesn't deteriorate like the EVA does. Okay, you know what I mean? And so, but I will tell you that the EVA foam is really quite good. Okay, it's produced some really good, and I think the other driver that's doing the testing with me prefers the foam. Okay, and for sure, the lighter the car, the more the foam seems to be the way to go. Okay, but that's just that's with what I've got and with what I'm doing, not in one of 80 million slot tracks in the world. So.
Oh no, it transfers. Trust me, I've been doing it myself. It definitely transfers. I've had combinations of foams and springs on certain posts, foams on others. It certainly works. It is difficult to determine which one's the best one because they all work. But the thing about the foam is it doesn't have the longevity of a coil spring. That's the only downside to it. But at performance, it's right there.
But how does it have? I'm not sure how to phrase the question. Is the longevity enough such that you'd be likely to replace it during normal car upgrades and or maintenance, or is it so short-lived that you're going to be frustrated that you're having to replace them so often?
Well, it depends how soon you get frustrated, but if you were using it, if I was building a car for an event, I would happily take it through a weekend, build it in the week before and use it that weekend. But I don't know what it's like a month down the line.
You wouldn't send it on a proxy.
Yeah, you wouldn't send it on a proxy. I wouldn't send it on a proxy. But then again, I don't do proxy, but proxy's months and months away, isn't it?
What about a 24?
I'd do that. Yeah, that's that.
Again, a lot depends on how much compression you put on the foam, Greg.
Beforehand, pre-compression.
Yes, if you're reefing down your nylock nuts and stuff like that to really compress the foam, you almost may as well not use it, because there's not going to be much compression there, and it's not going to have a good memory life. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
I normally set them so that when you put the blade underneath, when you put the blade or the screwdriver blade in the slot of the screw or underneath the chassis, when you spin it, the whole thing will spin.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, you're using a lock nut, so you mean with very little force.
The lock nut and the bolt and everything will spin in the chassis. That's
Gotcha. The foam will spin as well, not just the nut and bolt.
He's describing a complete static setting. In other words, it's not loose, so the bolts don't move up or down, and nothing compresses. But
There's more friction between the foam and the nut and bolt than there is between the foam and the pod.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
The other nice thing from in that setup from a proxy perspective is I have had proxy cars come back where the pod has been adjusted from when I send it out. If I send out a car where someone puts in a Phillips screwdriver underneath and twists and twists and twists, and the whole screw and the bolt head and everything just rotates around, you can't mess with it. You got to take the body off.
Yeah.
So
that's a good reason just to use
not to say that that's prevalent in proxies, but I certainly know it has happened.
I mean, that's why people put notes on every screw hole, back 1/4, back 1/2, back 1 full.
Right. Which really is inviting people to mess around with the nuts and bolts, right?
How tight is tight before I back it off?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, I got a question for you. And in regards to the static setup, okay, do you feel that that is exactly correct as far as I'm concerned? That's something that I noticed. Without foam, okay, with like just silicone above and below, would you still use a static setup with that as well with your?
Again, I find and again, it's horses for courses here, Garth. I run predominantly on wood tracks with rubber tires. So, and that is a different setup than running on a plastic track with silicone tires. So, and a little bit of compression will make a lot of difference. Generally, I find on plastic tracks, you can have a little more pod movement than you can on a wood track. And that largely boils down to the fact that most wood tracks have more grip than most plastic tracks. So you generate a little more torsional force on the chassis, and the plastic tracks are bumpier and all the rest of the stuff. So having said that, that will depend on your track design, your track power, your gear ratio, your motor, everything. So there's no one size fits all on this. Basically, you've got to put it together and try a bunch of different settings.
Yep. All right, are we ready to move on? I think so. Go ahead, Mike.
I have get this out of here.
You're good.
A white kit.
Yeah.
It is a Bentley.
Bentley?
Yep, it's a Bentley. I figured I waited long enough for them to come out with delivery, and they haven't. So I guess I had to bite the bullet and paint this. So we'll see.
What livery are you gonna do?
Well, it's
Well, you might with some decals.
Arbor All.
Armor all.
There you go.
Smoking.
No, it's going to be green, dark green,
Yeah, British green.
and
Oh, should be.
I'd like to have. There's a sort of a semi hockey stick swish on the sides that one of the liveries has. I'd like to get those in gold if I could, and try that, see what happens. But we'll see. I just got it today, so I have no
Does
no
anybody
ideas.
have decals you want, or you gonna have to paint it all?
I'm going to look around and just see. But
What
worst
make
comes
is
to worst, you can put a gold stripe on it as is my P68 and let it go at that. I'd prefer a livery, but my modeling skills are so bad that I just like, and I don't have enough patience to do that kind of stuff. I am no geo.
Yeah, God, I certainly can't talk. I mean, to me, a color, a stripe, and a bunch of sponsorship decals, just random sponsorship, doesn't even have to be legit. And it looks like a race car. Oh, and a number. Sorry, and a number.
That's race car, exactly. Who makes that one, Mike?
Sideways.
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 Atalaya makes the kills for those.
What colour are you talking about, Greg?
Oh, I only ever talk about blue and yellow. Mike was talking about British
Green and
racing,
gold.
British racing green and gold stripe.
Doesn't actually look all that bad in white there, Mike.
No, it doesn't. It's
That's
not
a
too
Bentley running. Oh no, yeah, there's
A couple of vinyl pieces of hockey tape to make some #1 numbers on it, and you're good to go, man.
Could be.
Yeah, but you have to use hockey tape.
Well, actually, no. You could, if you really want to save some weight, just get a Sharpie and put some numbers on.
There you go. I would like to look slightly more professional than that. Just slightly.
Just
I hope you come up with a competitive race car at the end of it, because I think you've got your work cut out.
Yeah.
Piece, yeah.
British racing green stripes on it. Racing stripes on white.
There you go, Mike.
Oh yeah.
Not enough green.
You don't have to do the
Looks like the left hand side is the
White.
ones in gold, isn't it?
Could be.
It's Atalaya. It's on their website.
Oh, okay. I'll take a peek. But yeah, that's what I was thinking of, that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, we will expect a fantastic looking car in a week.
Like, good luck with that expectation.
All right. Anything else, Mike?
No, that's it. Except for my frustration with registering all my slotted shit.
Yeah. Well,
I now have 3 devices that had the slotted app on it. None of them work.
Mike, they have those in stock at Electric Dreams.
What's that?
Those decals.
Oh,
nice.
They
There
do.
you go.
Yep.
cool. It's okay. I can order some more oxygen chips from them.
There you go. Put it in your cart with a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know where to
That
find.
over the $100 mark, and
It's a free ship.
3 chips and a set of decals.
I was gonna say it doesn't take very long. Doesn't take very
No.
much.
No.
All right. Thank you for sharing, sir. Does anybody else have any show and tell before we move on? Moving on. Club Corner. If you got some racing you want to talk about, past, present, or future, I'll start off. I failed miserably at our race on Monday. I did not take any pictures of the standings or video of any races. We usually have 8, 9, 10, sometimes 11 guys. But for whatever reason, I don't know, Labor Day weekend, people were recuperating or something. We raced on Tuesday night because of Labor Day weekend, but we still only had 5 guys, so it was a relatively short night of racing. We did 4 full rotations of our series cars because we only had 5 guys. We could fit more rotations in. We usually do 3. And I had some early offs that I was just like, what the heck? Did that car like literally just jump out of the slot? But it was actually driving pretty good. It was on plastic, like when I was complaining about the performance of the car a couple weeks ago. It was actually driving pretty good, except this track had some inconsistent power, we'll say. So like the very first heat I had after we did our King of the Hill in IROC, which was the IROC was Scalextric. I forget, it was open wheelers. It was Indy cars. There you go. Not A1, not F1, Indy cars. So they drove a little bit differently than our Scale Auto with foam rubber tires. So when I got my first heat with the Scale Auto, I was in a lane that had insufficient power down the main straightaway. So I'm just squeezing as hard as I can to get that car to go faster. But then after turn 1, the power came back. And I was squeezing like I was down the main straight. Came off. I got 1 lap because I happened to go under the light bridge before actually completing a whole lap. And then the second minute wasn't any better, and then I had other heats, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I was at the bottom of the 5-person list of finishing order. Didn't even get a podium. But the car actually is running pretty good. Ran my Professor motor controller. It's an okay controller. I wish it had more brakes. It's just a regular old 2-knob, club controller, Professor motor controller. Wish it had more brakes. Wish it had a little bit more nuance in various things. But it does the job. I'm not blaming the controller. I wish I could have gotten a little bit more brakes out of it, but I'm not blaming the controller for my performance. I did get kicked off by one of the guys. That was annoying, as it always would be. Yeah, I mean, it was still a fun night. Even if I come in last, I had fun getting there. So I don't call it a wasted night. It was still a good fun night, chilling with the dudes, playing with toy cars. That's all that matters. All right, I see 2 hands. If anybody else has any racing they want to talk about, raise your virtual hand or go like this. Mike, you're first on my list.
Okay.
First on everybody's list, Mike.
What was that, Chris?
You're first on all of our lists, Michael.
First one to fling things at? Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. I ran a couple of cars that I hadn't raced for a while. The Polycar Ferrari. I forgot to take pictures ahead of time today. I was too busy putzing with my Polycar, with my oxygen stuff. Anyway, this is the Polycar Ferrari 126C 2, and it raced against, because Shiggy was the only one who was here, Mike was on holiday, against the SCX FW07, which has the Polycar pod inserted in it. And these things were within a couple thousandths of a second of each other, to the point that since Shiggy ran a lot more fuel than I did, he used up a lot more fuel. He wanted a rematch. He says, let's switch cars and see how much fuel you use. Well, I did use a little bit more than him, but only like, a couple of liters more than he did. And I had gone further besides. So, but in the second race, I got beat. So this car won both times, but I got beat mainly because I didn't quite get enough fuel on my last stop and fill up, just a splash and dash. And I didn't go quite far enough.
Did you have any BOP on those cars?
No BOP
So
whatsoever.
they were dead even, basically.
Qualifying qualifying was dead even. And that's, considering you look at the two chassis, and, one is the slotted factory one, and the other one is just a home built with basically the pod screwed onto the flat plastic chassis.
Yeah.
So it's not much different though, really. I can account, there's a little bit of speed loss I discovered afterwards because I have a brass piece of tubing and two bushings in the front, and they were not glued in, they were held in with screws. You can see on this, I've screwed drop screws in at the top to hold it in position. And it wasn't enough. It came out of position a little bit. So that would account for a little bit of difference in speed, but it was so minimal. It was just, they both have the same tires and wheels. So it's, it's pretty even that way, but it was fun from that standpoint. And in the second race, or third race, if you want to call it that, I had two MR slot cars.
Yeah,
These are the
yes,
ones that
sir.
I only have two of them in the class, so I haven't gotten the third one yet. But so I only race them when there's only two of us.
You
And
should
so
put
it was
Shadow
the
in that class.
what's that?
You should get a Shadow for the third car.
Well,
That
I've
would make perfect sense.
got a Shadow, but somehow I find it difficult to run 90s cars and a Shadow in the same race. It just
But those two, you're running those two in the same race.
well, these are period correct.
Okay.
They're late 90s Le Mans cars. Both
But
of them.
they'd be in the same. They would be in the same
They would
class.
be, yeah, they were raced against each other.
Really? They're not.
Yeah.
They weren't in different classes.
No,
Wow.
they were Le Mans cars.
Well, yeah.
95 through
Like,
98.
Some differentiation between the two.
To answer Greg's question, yes, they are different classes, but Le Mans always runs different. Like there's several
Yeah.
classes within
Multiple
it.
classes in the race at the same time. So technically, there's an overall.
Yeah, the F1 GTR is not a direct competitor to the Ferrari,
Okay,
although
thank
they
you.
share track together.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, but they did both participate in Le Mans at the same period, which is good enough for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could say that there's a difference there. However, the GTR, one of the GTRs won overall Le Mans, so they were competing for top
In the rain.
position in the race.
It was in
So
the rain.
it wasn't regardless of the differential in class. They were both competitors in for first position. So anyway, that's my justification for running them.
Hey, perfectly fine with me. I'm just.
Yeah.
It's rare.
Anyway, the GTR was slower. I qualified slower. There was a 0.3 point difference. I gave myself a 0.3 point difference, 0.3 on the scale for adjusting the fuel level. It's a 1 through 10 fuel level, and I usually run at 5 and 350 are the positions that I run on the fuel level. Fuel 350 is the size of the tank. 5 is the burn rate. So I dropped the burn rate on my car a little bit, and it made it almost perfectly equal. I mean, it was a knockdown, drag 'em up fight, except Shiggy was screwing up more, and that made a difference. That was the difference there. And one of the reasons that he uses more fuel than I do is because he's not quite as smooth. I've got a little more, track time for sure. Plus, I do generally end up doing 200 or 300 laps before we start. So he comes in cold or hot, as it may be, because he rode his bike here. But he's a good racer, but he drives completely differently than I do. He's a little bit faster on the 124th track than I am, mostly because of his cars. If I've got a car that's as good as his, I'm right up there with him. But I tend to fly out of the slot more at the big track than he does because I don't have the reflexes. And plus, I'm not used to holding my trigger finger down for like a second and 3/4 until okay now. It's like being on the Mulsanne straight and at Le Mans, and you're just floor to foot to the floor and waiting for the speed to come up. And okay, how long is it going to take? It's the same way with that, but minuscule as far as seconds go. I mean, it's just a little bit of time, but still. And there's not enough corners for me in that big stuff, but it's fun anyway. So anyway, that was it for us. The videos are up if you want to see them, and all the stupid banter in between. The live stream is up if you want to watch that too. Be bored. I was actually really surprised. I looked and there were on the live stream, there were 66 visits. And it's like, what?
Wow.
It's just like, holy cow.
It's just the same person hoping that you're going to look at the comments.
I told you, John.
Go back, see if he replied.
Need to get out more, John.
Yeah, I'm always surprised that, I enjoy the Electric Dreams broadcast because it's so professionally done, but I can't sit there and just let it go for hours and hours. But a lot of people do. They just, they.
Well, one of the things that helps, I think, is that the board is pretty visible on mine, so you can see where the fuel's going. You can see what the laps are and who's leading.
Yeah.
I like the position that the fact that the colors move position, so you can see that happen.
Yeah.
If somebody goes into first place, you can see that they have done that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to just look at the laps to see who's in first. So, and I like that color coding. I think I would love. I don't think they have that in RCSO2. They don't have it switching around like that, and it would be preferable if they did.
I thought it did. Oh no, yeah, the people because it's squares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have it switch positions.
Yeah. There's some other indicator, but
Yeah.
not quite as obvious. Yeah.
So, anyway, it was good fun.
Does that, though.
I was annoyed that I lost I only lost the rematch race in the last 4 laps because of the fuel thing. I stopped for fuel and that was it. I couldn't catch them. I was close though. It's good fun.
That's good racing.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Ready to go, Lenny? Take it away.
Okay, so a couple of weeks back we had round 7 of our point score series, otherwise known as the Sheep Station round. This particular week, we had the GP cars, LMPs, and Group 5, so the 3 classes that contested the round. First up, we ran the Group 5s, and of course, Andrew resumed normal services by taking that out, young Andrew. Jason came in second, not too far behind, half a lap. And then Steve came in third. Good result for Steve. And then Ian was quite close behind him, just missing out on the podium. Then me, Jeff, Callum, Norm, Andrew, and Bert. So there's the podium. So there's Andrew's Ferrari, Jason's BMW, and Steve's Ford Capri. So they're all basically standard sideways, but we allow air rim tyres on the back. That was a rule that came out a few years ago, and the horse is already bolted, and everybody's got them, so you can't go back. And I think they're better to race with the air rims rather than with the solid rim on them. So, yeah, so that was a good race to start off with. Next, we ran the modern GP cars, and once again, Andrew won again by a country mile, pretty well. 7 laps and 5.8 second time. Ian finished second, and Steve got another podium in third. I finished fourth. I was chasing Steve down at the end there, but I couldn't quite get there. Then Norm, Callum, Jeff, Jason, Andrew, and Bert. There's the podium. There's Andrew's Formula 2022 car. You notice he's trimmed the tyres right down to get a bit better handling. Then there's Ian's 86, 89 car in Jägermeister colours, and then there's whoever finished third, who finished third, I've better remember it. Steve again, yeah. So, and
Nice
with
to
just
see
a
an
plain
F1
yellow car.
in the front there.
Sorry?
I'm a little bit surprised to see the F122. I thought the 86, 89 was the better car.
Well, not with Andrew preparing it. Andrew's a very good preparer of cars, and being that he's 22 compared to the rest of us, the youngest one's 53. Like I say, you've still got 40 years of reactions to use up before you get to our level.
Mm.
Yeah, no, he's a good little driver. He knows how to prepare a car. He's been doing it since he's about 10, I think. So, sorry. And then we ran LMPs. So Andrew once again, so he's taken the hat trick on the day. Then Jason in second. A few laps behind, 2.5 laps behind that. Car of Jason's very quick. We used that 2 years ago for the 500, and it was incredibly fast. It was the first time I've ever been sub 6 seconds on my track with that car, so that's a very good car. Then Steve again in third, so he had a good night, and then me in fourth, a lap down. Then Ian, Callum, Jeff, Norm, Andrew, and Bert. I forgot to put a point score in, but Andrew's pretty well sewn the series up now, so the rest of us are racing for second. So, but they're always good nights. We have a lot of fun. We don't get too serious about it. That's the joke about the sheep stations. That's the same we have in Australia. You're racing for sheep stations, mate. You're getting too serious. So, yeah. So that's it pretty well. So once again, I'll get out your way. I'll stop the share.
Who won? Who ran the Nenko in F1?
Nobody. That's one of my display cars.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the car in my collection. What I do is I put a photo up a couple of days before, just so they know what class they're racing. Some of them aren't very savvy with what the classes are, so if you put a photo up, they get a better idea of what they're racing.
Right.
The red
So,
hair.
they're slot car enthusiasts, they're not motor racing enthusiasts. So I often have arguments over what car's eligible for which class.
Yeah.
It's all good fun.
I mean, everything I know about race cars is through slot cars. So
Yeah, a lot of them are like that. I'm a motor racing nut from way back. I started waving flags at them when I was 15. So
Interestingly, the Bentley that I've got, you talked about going to air rims for the sideways cars.
Yeah.
The Bentley came with air wheels on it.
yeah, the GT3s do. The Group 5s don't. They come with solids.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, most of us have got what do you call them? NSR rims on the back.
Ah.
With varying diameters. Bit of a trend going down to the 16 mil diameter rather than the 17. But makes for good racing. It's good class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of my favorite classes.
Yeah. Just going back to the tape thing that we were talking about before, Larry Perkins, I've mentioned him before, he's a bit of a legend here in Australia. They asked him why he always ran number 1. He said, what's the easiest number to put on the car with gaffer tape, mate? And he ran number 11 right through his touring car thing. Yeah, through touring car when he ran his own team. I like it.
I want to get a sideways GT3 just because it seems like the kind of car that I would like. And of course, you brought yours over, and they were great cars to drive around. But they haven't made it blue and yellow of anything.
Yeah, they did. Oh,
Like
no,
what?
no, not
What?
a GT3. You're right.
Okay.
You could get somebody to do there's a Aston Martin Vantage V8 livery that's blue and yellow, the Bilstein
Yeah.
livery.
I try not to press my luck too much. Like I've already got the guy that did that beautiful MR slot car Porsche 911 Evo for me. He's doing a BRM version of the same car for me. Not gonna push
Yeah,
another one on it.
don't
Gio
overspeed.
doing a thunder slot for me. If there's somebody out there dying to make Greg a blue and yellow sideways GT3, holla at your boy. But otherwise, I'll just bide my time until the opportunity seems.
Come on, Greg, a couple of rattle cans and some
Oh
masking
God, I've done it so many times. I'm just absolute shit. I have no desire, none whatsoever, to fuck up another car. Sorry, YouTube censors.
I'll beat that.
No, not got that. I wouldn't be prudent.
Depends how you spell it. If you use PH, you'll be all right.
All right, floor is open. Anybody got anything? As long as it's slot car related. Talk. Open your yapper. Interrupt me. Blah, 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 blah. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, okay. See the background there. I was able to find the that book, and here's the McCoy, more or less. This MRC Chaparral. I know they're not great slot cars, but it's a nice model.
It's a beautiful model. Yeah, it's so nice.
And I was able to find the book on eBay. Got a really good price out of some bookstore in Florida, and it's oh gee, right on the tip of my tongue. The book's not here yet. It's Dave. He did
Friedman.
a lot of shooting for Ford.
Is that the cover of the book?
Yes, that's. I think that's the dust jacket.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
There are probably some nice Dave Friedman photos in there as well.
That's it. Dave Friedman.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, actually,
The
I
whole
have,
book is him.
right.
He did a lot of photos, I think, for Ford back when during.
He actually worked for Carroll Shelby. He was the staff photographer for Shelby Cobra.
You find a lot of books about Le Mans that show, or even that have pictures, and they're listed as the Dave Friedman, the Ford collection, or the Ford something, Ford Museum, or something like that.
Yeah, he donated a lot of his work to a museum, I think, for tax. But the great thing about the United States is when you donate stuff for to an actual museum, you actually get like almost 100% of your money back. Unlike we Canucks, we don't do that. But yeah, he actually did a lot of that. He has a great, not that I'm on Facebook, from what I understand, he has a great Facebook page of a lot of his work.
Haven't seen that. But just will be a pretty good reference. Apparently, it's not very technical. It's mostly action photographs.
Yeah. It's a nice book.
One way or another. Yeah. There are some later books that are more, I think, Falconer's book, and there's a new book that just came out that's has more technical detail in. And yeah, that's a good one.
This is a great book as well. This is the one where they actually talk about Jim Hall's connection to Cox.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, and again, this is the one you're talking about, Richard Faulkner. This is the Faulkner book.
Faulkner. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a new book that's just come out too that I got off of Amazon. That's basically the biography of Jim Hall.
Right.
And it's written by Bert Levy, the guy who did the Last Open Road fiction books. And it's really nice, but it's like 1.5 inches thick in hardcover, and it's as heavy. It's a big square thing. It's as heavy as all heck.
Yeah.
Not the kind of book you can read in bed. It's just too heavy.
Well, not without breaking your nose.
Yeah.
Now, if you really like Dave, here's Dave Friedman's book that he released about Team Cobra, right? Yeah.
He's fairly prolific, and his photography is really nice.
Well, what he talked about was that, he got paid to be at these races by Shelby and Ford, and he had enough sense to bring extra cameras and film. So he shot everything if he was at a Can-Am race.
Right.
You know, if he was at a sports car race, he shot everything. I mean, he was a photographer. You know, you eat what you kill. So that's what he
I have
did.
another book about I think it's maybe Americans at Le Mans by Bacharach, and there's a photo of a Chaparral 2F in there, and it was taken by Friedman, and it's in the, you know, the credit was Ford.
Yeah.
So they were watching everybody, and as they should. When you have that kind of investment, I'm sure they were watching everybody to see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
they did
from
react.
a racing team perspective, they wanted to see what the competition was doing. But from Dave's perspective as a photographer, he just kept shooting everything so he could sell as much as he could.
That Chaparral 2F is quite an interesting car because it only raced like 7 times, I think, that
Right.
year. But every single time it raced, it was in a different configuration. So if you're trying to model them, there are different wing struts, different wings, trim tabs on some of them, little beards on others, different openings on the front of the car, different venting on the rear of the car, all kinds of things like that. I went through it all when I was building up a slotted a 2F white kit, and you can build 7 different variants very easily, or 8 maybe, because there's 2 cars in one of them.
And the 2H's are like that too. It was never the same twice. I don't think it was ever the same twice. And some of the changes were very radical, like that gigantic midships wing.
Oh yeah, that big midship wing. Yeah.
Yeah, because Surtees absolutely despised that car. And so much so that Team Chaparral went and got a McLaren for him for like the balance of the season.
I know, for the beginning of the season,
For the
before
beginning of the season,
before
'cause-
the 2H was ready to go.
right, yeah, because the 2H was supposed to like not be open. It was actually supposed to be closed, and
Yeah.
and then but Surtees couldn't see out of the bloody thing.
Dennis, this is the one you're talking about, right?
That's
Yes.
exactly the
Texas
one. Yes,
Texas.
that's the
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, George Levy.
George Levy, sorry, different guy.
It's okay. I just
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It's
just came
a
out
good
recently.
book. I'm only through about 6 or 7 chapters. I haven't finished it yet, but
I've become acquainted on Facebook with a guy that races historic Trans Am races, and he went to what they have a soiree in June at Chaparral Cars in Midland. They have a party, barbecue, and that kind of thing. You pay a certain amount of money, and you get different levels of stuff. And that's when the book came out. It was in June in Texas.
There you go. There's the McLaren from Chris. Perfect. Yep.
Cool.
M12.
That
There's
was-
a guy in this city where I live that has that car, owns that car.
This was the only year really that this was 1971.
Yeah.
And the M12 was all customer cars. They ran, Chaparral had one, Lothar Mochenbacher had a couple of one, and blah, 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 blah. But this Surtees ran this. And again, back to Chaparral's, or Dennis's point on Chaparral's, this bloody thing changed, not race by race, it changed practice session by practice session.
I've seen that car in person in a guy's basement who owns it. He's here in town, believe it or not, in Knoxville. And
I believe it was earlier than 71 though, Chris, because that car ran with the high wing. So it was 69.
Yeah. It's a wonderful car too. Also, Surtees liked it. Anyway.
Yeah, I seem to remember him saying if they'd concentrated on that car and developed it properly, they could have won the series that year.
And Chaparral was building their own 427 engines or whatever, 8-liter, 9-liter, whatever they were. They weren't using the same engines as McLaren or some of the other guys. And I think they supplied engines to a couple of other racers, but their engines were putting out a lot of power also.
Yeah, well, Jim Hall had a lot of irons in the fire, though. I mean, he was doing tire development for Firestone. R&D for General Motors.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
oh yeah, and then racing in a whole bunch of different series. I mean, he was doing endurance racing as well as Can-Am and the
Eventually
USRC.
Trans Am, yeah, eventually
Yep,
Trans
and
Am.
Trans Am. That's right. Yeah, yeah, with the Chaparral Camaro. That's right. Yeah.
Here's one you probably haven't seen. A friend of mine went down to Midland about 10 years ago and met with Jim Hall. I put the link in the chat, but it's in Victory Lane magazine. And it's kind of an interesting that he developed a friendship with Jim Hall when they were, when he was doing SCCA work and, the Can-Am was running. And Jim said, when you're down, come down to Midland and visit us. So he did. Kind of an interesting article. That was just before the museum was opened.
Jim Hall apparently had a real affinity for the SCCA. I'm not exactly sure why. A lot of people complained about him screwing things up, particularly with Can-Am. But for some reason, he had a real loyalty to the SCCA. All of his cars had SCCA stickers on them and that kind of thing. And almost nobody else ran those. And I don't know why, but he did.
Wow. Cool. Very cool.
Cool.
Now, Jim, was that the same chap who had a piece of the MESAC track as well?
Yes, same guy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good memory.
Yeah, well, when you're ugly, you can't be stupid.
You can, but
Oh,
That's cool. Well, I don't know if anyone's interested. The other thing I did too was that I was making more hay bales for the track, and I don't know if you guys are interested to see if you have children or grandchildren. It's a great non-toxic way to make hay bales, and I'll take you through it if anyone is interested.
I think that's a great thing.
yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to share screen, and let me show you the ingredients. Really, really simple. So, of course, a cork from your most favorite adult beverage.
That's a Mike Mauer tuning kit.
There you go. And then packing styrofoam. It doesn't have to be really sort of, fancy styrofoam, just plain old styrofoam. And I cut these to size for the hay bales that we wanted. Some dark thread. In this case, it's not even black. It's actually like navy blue. And this is actually like a lemon zester, so to grind up the cork. And this stuff is actually, it's kind of like double-sided tape, but it's actually adhesive that I get at Curry's. And you can get it in various widths, and I happen to get the right width for the hay bale. So there's a close-up of the ingredients. And I just wanted to show that it's not double-sided tape. It's actually just adhesive, believe it or not, which is really kind of interesting stuff. And then there's, of course, celebratory cork. There's, of course, the thread, the zester, and the size of the hay bale. So then you just basically grind up cork into something, and you get this lovely sort of yeah, it's not really a powder. It's actually long enough that it looks like strands, and it really scales up nicely, which is really kind of cool. So then once you've done enough, you put the adhesive on these squares, and you take the backing off. So that's all covered in that adhesive. And then you put the string around, because hay bales, of course, are bound lengthwise, not widthwise, because as animals eat, you don't want them to cut their mouths. So they actually eat from this end and then take the straw out and the wire goes away. So double wound, one on each side, and you don't even really have to tie it. The adhesive holds the string in, and then what you do basically is then take your now bound and sticky hay bale and just put it in like you're breading a piece of chicken. And then when you're done, that's what it looks like, and that's it. And it really looks like a hay bale.
Are you able to zoom in?
Sure.
How that actually looks? Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Crazy. Yeah.
The cool thing is too, we just stack them on the track, so when you hit them, they go flying, which is really fun.
Then you got to stack them back up.
Yeah, but that's half the fun. And that's what they look like when they're done.
Yeah, it looks good.
Sugar lumps.
Sugar
Yeah,
lumps.
pretty much. Yeah, they would be brown sugar. Yeah, for sure.
With twine.
Yeah, and even from the top. So and the great thing is that there's nothing toxic here. You'd have a ball with it. Absolute ball.
That's pretty cool.
So there you go. There's 5 minutes eaten up.
I did a bunch of 3D printed ones for one of the guys in the club, and of course he's like 50 or 60 or just a whole bunch of them, and they weren't designed to stack, but they stack okay, and so he's got them in lines and a few that are stacked too high here and there, and every once in a while a car goes into the hay bales. And then it's like, okay, I'll gather up all the hay bales and either just set them aside until the end of the race night, or line them back up and everything, because they're not held together any more than those were, and so they just go flying.
You got to wonder about the logic of using hay bales in real racing, though, because one of the things that everyone feared was fire, and hay doesn't burn at all, does it? No. It's like you hit it with it's 60 miles an hour. Your tank goes, and all you're doing basically is creating like a big Ronson lighter.
Sponge for
Yeah.
fuel.
Famously happened in Monaco, didn't it?
That's what did them in. Yeah, it was Lorenzo Bandini, Monaco, 1967. Yeah. And again, the safety facilities were so bad. The car was upside down, and everybody was looking in the harbor thinking that he was like ejected of the car, and he was upside down with hay bales burning. It's just not fun. But still, they look great.
Nice.
And burn even better.
All right, so for a subject to talk about, since people aren't jumping up and down to introduce their own subjects, there was recently an interesting thread on Slot Forum, and I'll just kind of condense it into one question, which is, what process would you use, or what sequence of steps, what things would you do to get two cars to be as closely matched to one another such that your driving is what causes one to be faster than the other, right? So close that basically your mood or whatever is what decides which one is faster at any given time, of day, right? So basically as equal as they possibly could be. What would you do?
Give it to Mike Mauer.
Give it to Mike or Garth.
Well, isn't that kind of what you do with your King of the Hill, though, where you take the exact same car and have different people run it?
True, but we're not trying to get two cars. Like, say for example, I've got a 2-lane track, and I want two cars to be as equally matched as possible for them to race on my track.
Okay, so you
Depends on
install
what kind of car.
so they can both run on the same
It
lane.
depends on literally everything.
Yeah,
Everything. It depends on everything. Like
Yeah.
Name it. That's what
all of it.
You're trying to create an IROC set that is absolutely equal.
Yeah. So let's say that's what your goal is to make an IROC set that's as
Good luck.
Yeah.
Most of the responses are it's not possible, but again, theoretically,
Build a whole bunch.
get a whole bunch and just race them.
If you want,
Well,
build 50.
I've put together cars for guys at the shop that race them. I've done them in 2 or 3 days or 3 or 4 hours. And it really doesn't, like, how it came out of the mold is the piece that came out of the mold. Did it come out of the mold early on in the mold's life or late in the mold's life? And and then you'll stare at them and you'll go, the tires are identical. Everything's identical. Everything is identical, except they're different.
If you want 2 cars to run the same lap time on 2 different lanes, let's say lane 1, lane 2, and you want them to run identical lap times,
That's different.
get 2 power supplies and adjust the voltage.
Independent voltage, yeah, independent lane spies, exactly.
Right. Probably the best, and slow down the faster of the two.
That was one of the other suggestions. Alan,
Right.
in our very own Alan,
It's
Wilson,
so,
contributed quite a bit to that thread. I'm sure you
I,
saw it.
I put together 7 or 8 pairs of tires, and I'm sure Dennis and a bunch of guys do for a proxy or a race at Electric Dreams or whatever. Same hubs, same this, same that, same glue, same day, same truing, same everything as far as I can tell. And there's a couple of tenths of difference between the tires. Yeah.
But that even happens in 1-to-1 racing.
Oh, that happens, sure.
Yeah.
IROC, not IROC.
Basically,
I mean, it was.
one of my responses was, it's the juju. The juju decides.
It's I mean, if you're doing an IROC race, who cares? Because the car stays on the lane and everybody drives it, so you can run a 2-second lap car with a 10-second lap car in an IROC race. Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
But trying to get them completely different, and then are your lanes, and so we have 2 identical cars, and then I go on the inside lane on Greg's truck, and he goes on the outside lane, and we're going, there's this lane's better. When do you
That's why I said fit a digital chip so they can both run in the same lane.
I mean, even if you say that, then it's, there's still going to be some.
Yeah, there's still going to be material differences. I mean, it matters whether your chassis came out the mold and sat in the bottom of the bucket cooling,
Yep.
or whether it was the last one to fall on top of the bucket cooling, because the one in the bottom has got all the other chassis on top, whereas the last one in sits there on top just cooling nice and flat.
right? Well, same with the motor pods.
Exactly, every piece.
Same with every piece that comes out, gears, everything.
Yeah.
And even the end bell on a can motor, injection molded.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, when you as a purchaser buy electric motors from Sun and or Mabuchi, they will specify right up front that there is a plus or minus 10% difference on all stock dollar motors. So, they're telling you right off the bat they're not equal.
And that's
And then
just
using the standout for a 24-hour race.
That's just the motor.
That's just the motor, exactly. It really can be a little bit like a look at the draw thing, but
Yeah.
it's such a difficult challenge. That is, it is the eternal challenge for slot cars, isn't it? To try to get two that race well together, and honestly, it's remarkable how many different variations will race well together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They'll all race well. Yeah, I mean, they'll all race well together. It depends what you out of the box know once they're tuned to a degree, and if you know what you're doing, you can have lots of cars run together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you got 2 identical cars and one's faster. How do you make the slower one as fast as the faster one, even though they're identical and you can't do it?
No, it's just so you slow down, so you take the path of least resistance and slow down the faster one.
But the same problem, trying to make it slow and fast, even though they're identical.
Yeah.
Well, you got to start switching out parts, haven't you? At that point, you've got to identify why. And if it's just a case of okay, it's obvious this one's faster down the straight, then you could switch the motors between the two and just see whether you've got the same problem. You can if you are using identical cars, you can just take the back axle out of one and stick it in the other, see whether the gear is the difference or the true you've achieved on the tires. You can mix and match your 2 cars. You can even switch the body shells across, see if they're making the difference. If you're playing with 2 similar cars, I would say mixing the cars together with the motors, the axles, things like that would be a way to try to get these 2 things running similarly on minimum spend.
Yeah.
Well,
I think you're right.
Yeah. Or as some proxy racers, if you can't build a good car, build lots of them.
It's like throwing 10 darts at the board at once, isn't it? One of them's going to score high.
Gotta be good. Yeah.
It's like racing HO cars when you're racing slip-on silicones and they're in 2000s increments, and you buy 20 pair that are identical within 2000s, but one pair is better.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's just
Just the way it is.
Well, I mean, all of the tires that we currently, or most of us currently run, rubber tires, are all made in small batches. And today's batch it was 74 degrees, and tomorrow's batch is at 68 degrees with less humidity. And they're all different.
And I've learned that because I've gone to events with the correct tires on the car and had a car in practice that's just been goddamn terrible. I'll tell you one compound. I wanted a slotted P6 tire in a particular mold shape, and now a P6 is an older generation of slotted tire compounds and types, but they're out there still. And I bought new old stock. I bought
Nice tires.
They're nice tires. Yeah, they work well. But I went to the event and I had a car that I could barely push the guide up the straight because it felt like the guide was jamming in the slot. And I was working on the guide. It was the guide I bought was one of those red ones. What were they called? Oh, they're made in Germany. They're available in Germany and the States. Slot Invasion. I pulled all the strings I could to get hold of a Slot Invasion guide in the UK. And I eventually got it from a German chap who bought it on my behalf, sent it to me. I reimbursed him when I next saw him. And I got what was, I believe, the killer guide for, or one of the killer guides. I believe the Franken slot is just as good for Carrera Circuit. And I went to a Carrera Circuit where they regularly race on urethane tires, and the groove in the track was clearly dirtied up with urethane debris, dust. And my guide was coming off black, and it was jamming in the slot, and I was dremeling the sides and abrading. I should say, not just dremeling, but amongst that, I was dremeling and abrading the sides of my guides to try and thin it down. I was running it down and down and down, and eventually all that I needed to do was put on my handout tires, because as soon as I put on my handout tires, it could push it along the slot. Traction, it was all traction. I couldn't identify straight wheel spin. It was okay through the turns, all the off power stuff, it was fine. But when I came onto the straight, it wouldn't even waggle like that. It would just go slowly.
So you were using P6 on a track where they were running urethanes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that'll do it.
No, it's urethanes for club work, for club night. I'm not going to say week in, week out, but certainly every fortnight. And we were turning up to run on P6 tires, and mine were practice tires, which were, I didn't own any, so I had to get some. Went to the lengths of finding a pair, and I found a pair that I don't think it was a retailer. I think it was just someone that had some lying around. I found a pair on eBay, or a pack. There's 4 in the pack. Mounted up a pair, gave them a gentle drew just to get them round, because I don't want to lose any ground clearance for that car. Don't actually want to. It was a fixed gear ratio, 3-to-1 gear ratio, so I didn't want to lose diameter. And the motor being where it was in the car already, I thought I'm better off with the gear ratio here because the track's large. I wanted the rolling diameter of the tire, so I just gave them a tickle and sent them and thought, they're awful and I can't keep up. I was doing all sorts. And then as soon as I fitted the handout tires, didn't even true those, sent the car out. It was one of the quickest in the meeting. I'll not forget it, but I don't like it. It was like that large bag. It must have been a bag of 100 tires like that. Just had a better batch of P6s, or mine had been exposed to sunlight or temperature or humidity or whatever it is that ages tires. I think it's UV light that ages rubber, quite honestly. And neither that batch had been kept in the dark, or that bag had been kept in the dark, and my set of 4 had not, or something. But they were completely different. Completely different. Just an interesting experience I had last year, I think it was.
I was gonna so on the, obviously technically that's the same topic, but Alan Wilkinson was on that thread that we're talking about, and he made some very good points that try to get two cars to work exactly the same. He just takes two cars and he improves them, right? So when he's got one car that's working better than the other, he works on the other car to get it to work better. And eventually he ends up that car working better than the first car that was working better, and it becomes the slow car. So he starts working on that one.
Laddering.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
His goal is not to get them even. His goal is to improve them, however they need to be improved. And no matter what he does, they're never even.
No.
So many people were like, it's not possible, and or it's not worth the trouble, and or why in the first place.
Yeah. And he gets
I do
there.
that every week.
There. I mean, you've been to his club, haven't you, Greg? And did you borrow his cars?
Yeah, I raced one of Alan's cars. Fantastic.
Yeah, I did the same. I've been to his club twice. On both occasions, I haven't got cars that fitted the category. Well, the second time I went with my own controller and borrowed Alan's cars. And even his second choice car in the same category was a fine car. Nothing wrong with it. I couldn't win, but I was not a local. I was, getting familiar with the circuit. Urethane tires, entirely new to me at the time. And they were good cars. Nothing wrong with them.
The other thing he said, or no, somebody else was, it might have, I don't remember who it was. But it was basically, when you have two cars that are not the same, and your goal is to make them the same, would it be easier to make the faster one slower to match?
Yes.
Always.
But then aren't you employing the same? I mean, this is apart from not having variable voltage per lane. Why is it easier to make it slower than faster? What would you do, and why can't you just flip that around to make the slower one? Sorry, why would it be easier to make the faster one slower, and why can't you just flip that around to make the slower one faster?
Well,
Because if
you
we
had
knew how to
front
make the slower one faster, we would have done it.
But what do you do to make the faster one slower? Knowing
tighten up on the front axle, for example,
Right.
or add weight, lots of weight.
Change gear ratios, change
gear
tire
ratios.
heights.
but don't you run the same risk of making it slower than the faster one? So not even, but slower than the faster.
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
So you're back to square one, right? You're just
Right.
swapping places.
it's hard.
They're
It's
always
hard.
here or here or here or here. They're never here.
The most foolproof way to do this is go and spend money on an additional adjustable power supply. If that's what you want to do, I've never been. My whole racing career has never been make equal cars. It's make faster cars. So I could care less if I have like equal cars. I just want faster ones. So
Yeah.
yes,
We all do.
the only answer is at the end of the day, the cheapest and least frustrating way to do it is buy a separate power supply
Yeah, take 1/10 of a volt off.
and just do whatever.
Sometimes when you take 1/10 of a volt off, the car will go quicker. So be
That was
careful.
also pointed out in that thread. Sometimes the things you do to slow down the car actually speed up the car.
Yeah.
I can
It's easier to drive. Exactly.
I think it'd be easier to come up with cold fusion do the thing, the beer can fusion thing.
There you go. Yeah, you're right.
My personal example of this is I've got the first scale electric set I bought for our kids was I subsequently added an Arc Air, which is the bonus of the Arc Air is that the kids can run around the room with the controllers in their hand and not tow the track behind them, because the wired controllers, as soon as they go to marshal a car, the track gets torn apart. But I've got 2 scale electric BMW minis in that set. And one runs absolutely sweet, nice and quiet, and the other one runs like an absolute bag of tin tacks. It makes such a racket. And I've done all sorts with the slower one, the noisy one. to try to improve it. And the only thing that really got it there was when I trued the tires thoroughly. I mean, to make them small and get the motor that little bit lower to the track, left the traction magnets in there. The other one, my red one, I've moved the magnet from behind the motor to in front of the motor. And that's made a difference. That's made enough of a difference that now the one that runs really sweet and quiet, you have to be gentle with. The other one, you can rag on it and get away with it because it's got its traction magnet further back, and it's just better for that. But so now I've got two cars that you can race together, but they both drive differently. You can get similar performance, but you have to drive them differently. I can't do separate power supplies through my ARC Air system. There's only one socket on it, and that's the way it is. So I'm stuck with that. I have, however, got a variable voltage supply, and I haven't tried it yet. But instead of running the 14.6 or whatever a stock Scalextric wall wart is, I've now got a similar plug that fits in the ARC Air on a variable voltage supply, the same type that I run on my tire truer. So I can run it down as low as 4 volts if I want to, but I don't think the ARC Air will work at 4 volts. I'm going to have to find out by experience in that. But of course, whenever I change that, I'm changing it for both cars.
You're going to brown it out before you get down to 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I realize. I just don't know where that is.
But since it's ARC Air, you can use an app, either the Scalextric ARC app or the Magic.
Yes.
To manipulate the power and or throttle.
Yes, and you know what? I'm ashamed to say that the last time I had a track down on the floor in the living room here, I tried to use ARC Air, and it wouldn't work for me. I've had it working in the past. I've had it working on several devices, but on my current phone and whatnot, I just couldn't get it to work. The
Scalextric one or the Magic?
It was the Magic ARC. I don't like the Scalextric one much, and it doesn't have the same capabilities that I wanted, which was that exactly. I wanted to turn the power down for. We weren't racing cars side by side all that much. Quite honestly, it was one kid playing with it, or me trying to use it as a testing track.
Scalextric ARC app does have the throttle curves. I thought it had power level. I'm pretty sure it's got.
Yeah,
power.
it has power level.
Maximum power level, has it? I didn't
might be
that one this time.
It might be because both of the apps put things in different places, but it might be in car settings versus driver settings, or vice versa, or something like that.
Okay.
But made me forget what I was going to say. Anywho, you can mess around with those settings. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
My track just went dead, like it should, when you've got the ARC Air. But yeah, Magic ARC app running. There was nothing I could do, including starting a race that would power the track. And I was like, I've only got this down for a couple of days. Let's just run it at full voltage. So I was testing disc cars at 14.5 volts and going, wow, these things are fast.
That's a good reason to get the variable voltage to just down just down before it browns out, so you can still have lap counts or something. But yeah, if the app isn't working properly, just shut it down, power things off, and just run it without an app of any kind connected. Yeah. Software computers.
Well, it's interesting. I do that every week. Try and get parity of the 3 cars so that everybody has an equal chance. It's really a lot of work. My attitude is do the same as Alan does. Take the slowest one and get it as fast as you can get it, and leave the other ones alone if they're close enough. But there's still often, even with just my driving, there's often 1.5 to 2/10 difference. And once in a while, I'll just pull a rabbit out of a hat and get a magic lap. And it's like, oh, that throws the whole thing off because I can't reproduce it. So it's interesting. It is a difficult process for sure to get them, especially since I sort of insist on having different cars. I don't like having 2 of the same cars for the most part. I do have some where I have the same cars, and I run into the same thing. Like for instance, I had the Carrera 600 SELs, the red pigs in yellow and silver and red. And the red one is the slowest. And nothing you can do can get it to handle it. I'm sure it's the chassis that's going on, but I haven't stripped it and flattened it yet. And that'd be my next thing to do the next time they come up in the rotation, and see if I can get it to there. Because the guy who is, we draw by lot to see who gets what car. It's blind, you know, we shake dice to see who gets first pick, and then we hide the cars and somebody switches them around, so that you can pick, you know, 1, 2, or 3. And so you never know which car you're going to get. So it's just the luck of the draw in that regard. But I do try to keep them as equal as possible, but it isn't really, as you say, possible to do that, especially more so, even if you do cars of the same make, it's going to be completely different with different models. There's always going to be one, which is the tendency for most people is in clubs and stuff is one guy will find out that this particular car, the current one, is either the Porsche 962 in Group C or you know, some of the other newer cars that are coming out. They're the current fastest thing. Well, you can see that everybody gravitates toward that. So you have a group of the same cars, which I find boring. So I'll try to use 3 different ones. And when it comes down to it, I'm lucky enough with the race control system that I can adjust fuel loads and stuff like that to try and make it as equal as possible and do a balance of performance. And, you know, it really does kind of work in real racing too. You know, the way they're working it in the World Endurance Challenge and stuff like that, they're actually doing that kind of stuff. But it's still a guessing game. Once in a while, I'll go a little bit too far based on what information I've got. And I go, oh, well, the car got faster as I drove it. It's like, shit, you know? So I won going away on one that was not too long ago in that fashion. So it's a tough road.
That's another factor too that nobody mentioned is that one car may be faster on one track and you put them on another track and the slow car may be faster than the faster car.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to try them.
So faster on one track doesn't mean it's faster on all tracks.
And if the temperature changes in the room, sometime that'll make a difference. You know, you get more people in a room, the temperature goes up a couple of degrees, all because all of a sudden your traction is different.
We used to
car
find
that's perfect is not after that.
we used to find with the 124 scale retro cars, if you moved a motor from one chassis to another, it would change the speed of the motor too.
Really?
With the same gearing, the motor would be slow in one car and fast in another.
Oh, what was your hypothesis on the reason, Dennis?
Usually the flatness of the bracket that you were bolting the motor onto.
I was just going to say some kind of tweak in the motor.
Yeah,
So they don't solder into those cars then?
Oh yeah.
some of the retro car rules didn't allow soldering them in.
Oh really?
Yeah,
But these are inlines, aren't they?
they're inline. Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So you were generally using mounting screws onto that
Yeah.
gearbox bracket. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, the
Wow.
bracket is a bent over bracket, so you know
The brackets are formed brass bracket. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, some of us, well, I always would draw file the face of the bracket, but
Yeah.
it's not always the bracket that's not flat. Sometimes it's the motor, the end of the motor that's not flat.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then,
Oh yeah, the flatness of motor cans is they're very, very. Have you ever tried to put one on sandpaper and rub it across it to see what?
They're all over the place. Yeah.
All over the place. Yeah.
and then it depends on how you tighten up the screws in the motor bracket because
Yeah.
a lot of the new cans are not, I mean, it's pretty soft steel, it's pretty soft metal in there. So
Yeah.
you tighten one up a little more than the other one and it tweaks the can. a
Yeah,
little bit.
I used to
Just-
connect I often do it. I connect a power supply to the motor while I'm tightening up the screws, and I watch the current draw of the
Yep.
motor as I tighten the screws.
So no
Because
doubt what's happening there is that the bushings are misaligning from the
Yeah,
end.
something like that.
Right.
Yeah, quite
Precisely.
easily.
You just tweak the face of the can
Yeah.
by tightening up the screws, and then it does not take much to misalign a set of bushings in a motor to increase the friction on the motor shaft.
And that's part of why some guys like to solder them in
Yep.
rather than screwing them in. But
Or in your plastic chassis, you could install them and then hot glue them.
Yeah.
I've thought about doing this for endurance races because you don't really want to put any tweak not only into the motor can, and I'm usually mounting into a plastic motor pod, but you don't want to tweak the pod either by fastening the pod hard to the can because you don't want to move your axle bearings. And
Right.
I'm not saying that they move very much, but I mean, ball bearing races is a little bit more forgiveness, and those are the ones I tend to use.
Yeah.
But
Well, as an aside to that, if when you're setting your motor, if you're gluing in motor bushings or excuse me, axle bushings into a motor pod, you should always install a motor in it
first,
first, and then set your axle bushings. Because if you set your axle bushings without a motor in it and then put the motor in it, the motor can tweak the relationship of the uprights and put all kinds of binding in your
yeah,
axle
exactly. So there's a case that I thought of, which is to initially install with screws, glue the motor and release the tension on the screws, which you don't get the opportunity to do when you're racing handout motors and all those kind of things. But it could be done. There is the opportunity. You wouldn't do it for a practicing car, but I could actually do that and potentially gain a few hundred RPM in the motor for an endurance. There's no doubt about it. Our car at the last 24 hour, it beat its qualifying lap during the race, and during the race you're not going for a fast lap, so the driving motivation is different. You're pushing for that one supreme lap when you're doing the qualifying, and you don't mind if you have the odd off in the attempt. But when you beat your qualifying lap in the race, because the car just keeps getting quicker and quicker as the race progresses, makes you wonder what you're doing in practice. Should you be trying to get to that stage during practice by bedding everything, which you can't really do because you're running handout motors.
Right. Well, that's
that goes back to all the variables that there's a gazillion variables in the race. The track may be rubbering in, and that's why the car's getting faster.
Of course,
there's so many variables.
And certainly, if you're running on a plastic track, and there is a level of magnetic attraction from the motor to the rails, your tires wear down in diameter, bringing the motor closer to the rails, and magnetism squares with distance, so it can make a difference.
Schrodinger's cat.
The car is both faster and slower until you tweak it.
Yeah. I see that Marco is on. I wonder if he has any news for us.
Apparently, he showed his face momentarily, and somebody on YouTube noticed.
Oh, there he is.
He is.
You're muted.
I was eating. I'm sorry.
You are very welcome to eat without the camera being on. That's okay.
Yeah.
No. So the only news that I have is that tomorrow tomorrow on Friday, we're going to be releasing the new Shadow from MR Slot Car. It's not the original, it's not the official release date. The release date is October 1st, but it's the promo date. So tomorrow on Friday, you're going to be able to pre-order. And we're trying to do, you guys know that Electric Dreams is doing the global distribution for the MR Slot Cars now. So my goal here is make sure that every vendor in the world has it. And we have a fair game, so we don't rush shipping and everything else. So everybody's gonna sell promo and sell on the same day. And next week or so, I can come here with the prototype of the Corvette, the MR Slot Car 59 Corvette with metal chassis. We already have the production sample at the store, but I'm holding on this so we can promote the Shadow now.
Is the white kit coming out at the same time?
For the Shadow, yes.
Yeah.
It's MR 1031 for the white kit.
Yeah,
Other
I'm
white
gonna
kit,
be I'm gonna be doing a video tomorrow, so hopefully Marco will get something up over the weekend because there's a couple of really neat features about the new car, the new livery of the Shadow.
yeah, and Dennis will be shooting a video tomorrow with Carlos. Carlos will be in the morning at Mark Jarrell's track. It's a super decorated track that he has in Torrance, taking pictures of the Corvette. And we're going to be shipping the Shadow with the new folders for MR's lot car.
Is the Corvette going to be a white kit or both?
There will be both the white kit and the car number 3 that won Le Mans, the first Corvette that won Le Mans in 1960.
Okay.
The Cunningham car. Yeah, and then after that, we're gonna have a Ferrari, a 250 SWB, probably in red, one of those cars, and then we're gonna come up with a new Corvette. That's the plan.
Which Ferrari?
250
50.
short
Oh,
wheelbase.
okay. 250 GTO?
No, the short.
No, the
wheelbase.
short wheelbase. And I believe
Oh,
that
okay,
only
yeah, SWB, yeah.
only Carrera made those, but in 124 scale. So it's gonna be a nice car to release.
$250 million each.
Yeah, maybe. No, the cars will say you have the same price. They will retail at $89.99. Even the
No, I meant the full size one. I think
the full size.
I think
Yeah.
the Ferrari 250 is one of the most expensive
Oh,
classic
yeah.
cars to buy, is it not?
Yeah, well, I think the most expensive real car for sale was the 300 SLR Coupe, the
Oh, it might be.
1955, yeah, the
Yeah.
Mercedes. And if you go on my Instagram, the first time that I saw that car, I posted a picture saying maybe the most expensive car if ever goes to sale, and then we went to sale and it was the most expensive car. And I believe that between the Ferraris, of course, you have the 250 GTO, the 250 SWB. But I think the most expensive Ferrari that if ever goes to sale would be the Bradvan because it's unique.
Oh, the bread van. That got crashed, didn't it? Has that been repaired? Oh, what, it must
Yes.
be. It must be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't that Mercedes go for like 150 million?
I don't remember. I can check it out. But
I-
that car is amazing. They kept one. They had two. They kept one.
I Googled it after Monterey Car Week and I thought it was like 130 or 150 million.
135.
130.
No, a lot of money. Yeah,
Stick
but
to
that-
that cars.
but you guys know the story behind it, right? So they have the Spider ones where Fangio and Sterling Moss raced in 1955, and you have the 1955 big crash. So they were coming with this car to race in 1956, but then after the big crash in Le Mans 1955, where like 80 people died, they canceled the racing program. So they never went to the track with those cars. So they have those two prototypes. One stayed at the factory, the other one, the guy who was the head of designer used as a daily driver. So Mercedes always kept those cars and they never returned back to races after like 10 years or something. And then those projects were rolled. So they kept those cars in Mercedes headquarters and they never raced, never used. And they're supposed to be much more faster than the Spider versions.
Mm.
Yeah.
Their head engineer, I believe his name is Uhlenhout.
Uhlenhout, yeah.
Yes.
He drove one of them around as his personal car for a while, kind of
Yeah.
a Harley Earl or somebody. Bill Mitchell.
Sold for $142 million at a private auction in 2022. At least that's what Google says.
Yeah. I was amazed by that car. Very cool stuff. Yeah, but from news, I don't have nothing. I just saw this week that the Carrera NASCAR cars are coming out. I got a little upset because they don't give us any heads up, and they don't send any samples to us, and they start to promote with friends. And then our phone calls, our phone start to call, people start to call us because the cars are out for our pre-orders, and they do, they promote in a way that is very confusing. But other than that, we have the monthly releases from NSR. They just sent me the news for new November. They're gonna come with a very nice looking modern Mosler. Oh, we have a special car coming from NSR. It's a limited edition for Electric Dreams only Corvette C8 with a very special livery. That's going to be a surprise, but everybody here, I'm sure, is going to be in love with it. Yeah, other than that, the normal slotted releases. Tomorrow, there's a big date, right? Tomorrow, Scalextric is putting out another batch of cars. You guys know about that, right?
Yeah, 24 August releases, isn't it? Or it's the fourth quarter releases.
Fourth quarter release, yeah. Third quarter releases. I think that's the last batch. And that's something that I was campaigning with Hornby to make, because they used to release everything on January and sometimes not even deliver on the same year. So when it got out, it's just old news. Nobody wants anymore. Nobody cares. So maybe now with this split and showing cars, we're gonna have something new. Like there's a Cooper coming, right? They show the silhouette of that. I think we believe it's a Formula One Cooper. So I'm hoping for the best. The cars from Hornby they've not been very attractive for the American market. We can see that the sales are going down, and now they're saying that they're going to increase the price. So let's see. Like the last news that I got from Hornby, they had this very kind of all street looking Jaguar that we don't sell, a rally car, and a Cobra with a fake Golf livery. So it's kind of, don't get me wrong, but it's very hard to do with this. It's very hard. At the other point, there's people releasing Corvettes and Shadows and Group C cars, and it's so much more attractive. I don't know. What do you guys think about these new releases? Have you guys been buying Scalextric cars?
I think they're more worried about their main market at Christmas time than they are about us.
Well, I did Marco, but it was a very old one and it was very cheap.
Yeah, we run a Labor Day sale with 6 or 7 models, and we sold like 50 cars on Monday, but that was it.
Marco, Carrera I know they struck a deal with Hendrick Motorsport
Yeah.
to do those 4 NASCAR cars. Do you know if they were do they have any plan to do a Garage 56 Le Mans?
Oh yeah, the Jason Button car. Yeah, the thing is, I initially thought that it was just a licensing deal with Hendrix, but apparently, if you go to their catalog, the last page they show all the license that they have. So it's a license with NASCAR too. So they have this double license there. Yeah, which is kind of complicated to get around IndyCar, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They can do the Fords now because the Stewart Haas licensing is really cheap.
Some hackering.
Cooper will be a good running mate for their Lotus, Jim Clark Lotus, I believe, won't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of vintage Formula One cars from Scalextric that still have a good stock of that. They're pretty cool. There's a lot of Coopers and old Ferraris and Lotus. If they continue that class, but nobody actually races those. I think people adopted the polycar cars.
Well, when they're at that similar price point, it's a little bit of a no-brainer if you want to race your cars, isn't it?
Much more expensive now because the slotted and polycars they're keeping at 69, the same price, the same retail price, in American dollars, the same retail price as Scalextrics. But now we believe that's going to have Scalextric cars will have an increase of $5 or $10.
Okay.
Not helpful.
So then you're going to be between a Thunder slot and a Scalextric.
No way.
It's kind of worrying for the brand. I mean, they've gone through this period in recent years of doing them TV and movie cars, but that's going to dry up. That's a limited size of pond. They're going to have to go back into more racing cars again. I don't really know. I don't know whether they know if the leadership of the company's been changing.
Well, they've changed everybody, right? So last February I went to Germany to meet.
I had heard that was the case, and we're kind of in the limbo at the moment, kind of waiting what direction they're going to take. And obviously, one of the first decisions that they've made is to hike the pricing. Let's hope that they've got some models that people want to buy in the pipeline.
There's a couple of things in play here. First one, we have a little bit before and during and after the pandemic, we had a little boom in our hobby. According to studies, hobby in America increased 15%, but I think slot cars increased much more. And then you see the professional companies like Thunder Slot, Revo Slot, Scale Auto, NSR, Slotted. They kind of approach the moment and they start to release much more slot cars than before. And we got to a point that we got 800 new slot cars in a year. And then all those companies, they become more popular, become more people talking about it, more people using it. And then the home racer knows that with the same price, they can have a much better mechanical product, like a car that works much better as a slot car. So why am I gonna keep buying Carrera and Scalextrics, one-piece chassis, even if they're cheap? Because people are buying Carrera because, first of all, because of the digital system that is the most popular one, and secondly, because it's cheap. And in America, it's only cheap because we have a discounter selling for much less than they're supposed to be selling. So we can get a car from Carrera Slots, which is a company that uses the Carrera name and logo, with an authorization, selling for 20%, 25% on top of the margin, which the standard of the market is 40. So everybody has to adapt to those guys. So the guy is doing like $5, $10, $12 in a car. And what kind of support Carrera wants from me if I'm doing only $5 to $10 and I have to match a discounter that they do nothing about it, and the guy is representing their name. So it's kind of a huge problem, and you have them going down, and at the same time, sometimes they offer you as a retail discount as a wholesale discount for you to help them to sell. And after 2 or 3 weeks, they have the same car on Amazon for almost the same price that they're selling to you. So the Lancia, the Group 5 Lancia, the Martini one that kind of looks weird compared to the Group 5 from Sideways. I think we pay around $27, $29 cost, and we're supposed to be selling 40% off. So the price of that car is supposed to be $49, $50 something. You can get a Carrera Slots for $35.99. But then if you go to
a little bit too much information here, Marco.
That's fine. I couldn't care less. Like I know.
I'm trying to find a good way to stop the live broadcast. So I'm just
but Greg, it's all public. And if you go to
top of the hour, I'm going to end the live broadcast. You can keep talking about prices and stuff, but I'm going to end the live broadcast. So everybody say bye until next week. Bye.
Sorry.